Part 1.
You are going to hear a conversation among Dr. Archer, Larry, and Judy, talking about the new term.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the new term. I hope you've all had a good break and that you're keen to start on your research project. What I'd like to do this morning is to give you a chance to ask questions about the project, requirements, ways of approach, how to get help if you need it. Today is informal. It may be already written on paper, but it's nice to have an opportunity to have it confirmed. So, any questions?
Dr. Archer, is there a confirmed due date yet to hand it in?
Yes, I can now confirm that it's 16th of July, not 15th, as first advised. Okay?
And what about the word limit?
Well, there is some flexibility on this, but in general it's 8 to 10,000 words.
Ah, I see.
And you can choose your topic, anything from years 2 and 3. Yes?
I still can't work out what I want to do it on.
In that case, you should see your course tutor to agree on your final topic, and you should also be aware that there is special assistance available at the library on library resources if you need help on that.
Can I just check on the deadlines for everything?
Certainly. Look, let me write it on the board when each stage should be completed. First of all, you've got to work on your basic project outline, and that's due in to your course tutor by 21st of February. Which is only 2 weeks away, so you need to get cracking on that.
Do we have to include a full reference list by then too?
No, your reference list is due on 6th of April, which is 1 week later, so you have time to discuss this with your tutor.
And when should we be doing the research?
Well, that's over a 1-month period, essentially April to May.
And the write-up?
Well, you need to do quite a bit of research before you get going on your writing, so that's really May to July, with a due date for handing in on the 16th. Any more questions?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Well, sir, just some advice really. It's about the research approach. Would you advise us to use some case studies?
Well, Larry, I know these can be difficult to arrange sometimes, but I really feel they are of great benefit in this subject. You can always talk to your tutor if you're having difficulty. Yes?
I've looked over some previous research projects that are in the library.
Is that a good idea, sir? I heard...
Okay. I don't think you should go through them in detail, especially at this early stage, or you might end up being influenced by them more than you realise. But yes, it really is about the best guide you can have to what's required to what's expected in this type of project.
Sorry, Judy, I butted in on you.
That's all right. It's just that I noticed one project was a joint one. They worked together as a pair. Is that a good idea?
Yes, I remember that paper. Working in a pair can have some advantages, but to be frank, this is meant to be an individual project, so it's best to work on your own.
About using subjects, is it okay if we use family members?
Your own relatives? I don't see why not. They probably offer some advantages in terms of availability, although you need to guard against possible effects on your research outcomes. So, you can if you want. Perhaps you should discuss this with your tutor if you plan to use relatives, so you can approach it in the best way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay then. Well, I hope we've been able to sort out a few things. You're welcome to see me at any time, or drop me a note if you have any more queries.
Fine, thanks.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a conversation between two people who are about to share a project at work.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm okay now, Sarah. But I was so ill last week.
Oh, dear. What was the problem? Did you eat that dodgy fish in the canteen?
No. At first, I thought it was a cold, but then my head started hurting and my eyes started to go blurry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds serious.
Yeah, it's okay, actually. I went to the doctor and he diagnosed me with a migraine. He gave me some medicine and I'm starting to feel much better.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm also glad you're in today because we have to work on a new project together.
Oh, are we in the same section?
No, it's just us. No one else. Mr. Donaldson put us down as B team because we live near each other.
That could be fun. What do we have to do?
Well, the project is partly internet research, then checking reference books for information to prepare a survey, which we have to use with people we know.
Great! What's the topic?
It's to do with shopping over the last 10 years. We have to find out how customers have changed their behaviour.
OK, so what's the first step?
I think the first thing to do is to check the list of references he gave me. But my computer is in for repair, so if I check in the reference library, would you be willing to look up some references online? Once we're done with the reference checks, we can write the questions together.
That's fine. I'll do the internet research. So, what sort of shopping are we looking at? Only food or goods or clothes shopping?
We have to find people who are willing to tell us about personal things, like deodorants, cosmetics, soap or vitamin creams. The other groups are doing food, electrical goods and clothes.
That won't be so easy, Sarah.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
People might think those things are a bit private.
Yes, I thought about that. I'll ask the women and you can ask the men. That should work okay.
Well, if you think so. Give me the list of references then.
Sorry, I left them in my other bag at Joseph's house. I'll get them for you tomorrow.
OK. Well then, this afternoon, I think I'll catch up on the notes from last week. Can you help me, or are you busy?
I've made you a copy of my notes already to save you time. Here you are.
Wow, thanks, Sarah. That's so thoughtful. Well, since there's nothing for us to do right now, Shall we go for lunch?
Well, actually, I'll have to catch you later. I have to go to a meeting this afternoon. Can I phone you tonight to arrange when to meet?
No, sorry. I have a date. Can we meet in the laboratory for the first class tomorrow?
I'm not sure because I have to go to the library to collect some books. What about meeting there at lunchtime?
Do you mean in the lab?
Yes.
OK. See you in the laboratory tomorrow at noon then. Sounds like we have a lot of work to do.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You are going to listen to a conversation between a tutor and two students. In the first part of the discussion, they talk about a fellow student. First, look at questions 21 to 23. As you listen, answer the questions. Write no more than 2 words for each answer.
Francis and Steve, hi. Now, before we start the tutorial, am I right in thinking that you haven't heard about Lorraine?
No. What about her?
She's already left.
What? Well, she hasn't told anyone.
You sound surprised. Weren't you half expecting it?
Yes, but she could at least have told us, though. We've been on the course together for the past 3 years, and it would have been nice to know. She always was the sort to keep herself to herself.
Yes, I know what you mean. Did she give any reason?
Well, she got that job.
What?
Yes, and she's been given permission to leave, as there's only a week to go before the end of the course. But she'll be back for the exam week.
Oh well, we'll just have to catch her on the mobile after the class.
She's gone back to Wales first.
Oh dear.
We'll get hold of her on the mobile.
She did say that it might not be possible to contact her for a couple of weeks.
Oh, OK. If that is what she wants.
Before the conversation continues, look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen to the second part of the discussion. The tutor and the two students are talking about assessment marks. For questions 24 to 30, there are 4 alternatives: A, B, C, and D. Decide which alternative is the most suitable answer and circle the correct letter.
Right, to work. We're here to look at your assessment marks for your coursework. I take it you haven't seen them yet?
No.
Not yet.
Well, you'll both be pleased. In fact, very pleased.
Yes?
Francis, you have come out with the top mark in the year.
Oh.
You have, in fact, got a starred first.
Wow.
Aren't you pleased, Francis?
Yes, I'm just speechless.
And, what about me?
Well, Steve, you got a first as well.
I don't believe it.
You might have done even better, but there were a few faults with the 5,000-word project you did on traffic management.
And what about the book review we had to do?
Yours was, I can safely say, the best we have ever had.
You're kidding.
I'm not. In fact, you have won the departmental prize for the piece. It's a pity, really, that your project wasn't of the same calibre.
It's still not bad at all, though, is it?
It certainly isn't. What do you think were the faults with your project?
I just wasn't very happy with the conclusion, and I got myself in a bit of a twist with the argument about road pricing.
By and large, your overall conclusions were okay, and I would say that your thoughts on road pricing were quite original. The problem was more with the actual end. It was a bit disappointing. You started off well, but then it ended rather suddenly, as if you got fed up with it.
Yes, I did kind of stop fairly abruptly. I couldn't think of much to say, even though I knew it was important.
Yes, that section needed a bit more work on it. But, as I said, by and large, it was very good. And, Francis, your project was excellent. So much so that we think you should take it further and perhaps do a PhD or at least an MPhil. What do you think?
I hadn't really thought about it. I've just been concerned with getting through this final year and getting all the coursework and exams out of the way.
I can understand that. But I do think that you ought to consider it seriously. If you perform as well in your exams as in your project work, you're on course for a first.
Do you think that I'd get funding for it?
Well, any grant will be discretionary, but you have as good a chance as anyone else. I'd even say a much better one. If you do get a first, it'll be the only one we've had in this department for 3 years. And I'd be happy to be your supervisor.
Thanks. I'd like that. Do you think I should start applying for it now or wait until after the exams?
I think you must really start thinking about it as soon as you can. And Steve, what about you? Have you thought about going on to do research?
I have thought about it, but I have a job lined up if I get a good degree. And quite honestly, I am fed up with not having enough money to do the things I would like to do.
I can understand that. Is there anything that either of you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I have a couple of things I'd like to ask, if you don't mind.
OK. We have roughly 20 minutes left, so, Steve, would you like to go first?
Right.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
In this section, you are going to hear a lecture. Questions 31 to 40 are based on the lecture. Before you listen, please look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Urban and community forestry can make great differences in our lives. Each one of us can make a personal contribution. As we develop and apply technologies for a better way of life, oftentimes side effects adversely affect our natural environment. For example, in our urban areas, summer temperatures and noise levels are higher than in surrounding countryside. Air pollution problems are more concentrated, and the landscape is significantly altered, reducing personal health benefits available to us by reducing access to wooded areas and green open spaces. Trees help solve these problems. Now, 75% of us live in cities and towns, and we can act individually to improve our natural environment through planting and care of trees on our own streets, and by supporting community-wide forestry programs. Through technology, we are learning more about trees and how they benefit mankind, and how we can do a better job of planting and caring for these trees that make up our urban forests. Trees are major capital assets in Australia's cities and towns, just as streets, sidewalks, sewers, public buildings and recreational facilities are part of a community's infrastructure. So are publicly owned trees. Trees, and collectively the urban forest, are important assets that require care and maintenance, the same as other public property. Trees are on the job 24 hours every day, working for all of us to improve our environment and quality of life. Without trees, the city is a sterile landscape of concrete, brick, steel and asphalt. Picture your town without trees. Would it be a place where you would like to live? Trees make communities livable for people. Trees add beauty and create an environment beneficial to our mental health. Trees impact deeply on our mood and emotion, providing psychological benefits which are impossible to measure. A healthy forest growing in places where people live and work is an essential element of the health of the people themselves. A well-managed urban forest contributes to a sense of community pride and ownership. Trees and other plants make their own food from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, water, sunlight, and a small amount of soil elements. In the process, they release oxygen for us to breathe. Trees remove gaseous pollutants by absorbing them through the pores in their leaf surface. Particulates are trapped and filtered by leaves, stems, and twigs, and washed to the ground by rainfall. Air pollutants injure trees by damaging their foliage and impairing the process of photosynthesis. They also weaken trees, making them more susceptible to other health problems, such as insects and diseases. The loss of trees in our urban areas not only intensifies the urban heat island effect from loss of shade and evaporation, but we also lose a principal absorber of carbon dioxide and trapper of other air pollutants as well.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your IELTS listening answer sheet.